Welcome to episode 7 of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast. I'm Jeff Gard, bringing you interviews each week from Northumberland County and beyond. You can find the podcast each week at totalsportsnorthumberland.ca and stream or download on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I have 3 great guests today, so I'm going to get right to the interviews. The Ontario Hockey League draft is coming up this weekend. I'll be joined by Grafton's Brady Gilmore to talk about his OHL draft experience in 2015 before he went on to play 4 seasons with the Saginaw Spirit. I will also talk to Quinte Red Devils president and U16 coach Tyler Longo about some of the players from Cobourg who are hoping to hear their names called at the draft this weekend. First, this week on the high school sports calendar would normally include a number of OFSA provincial championships, including track and field, which would normally run Thursday through Saturday. I'm pleased to be speaking with a former longtime teacher and coach at East Northumberland Secondary School in Brighton, who is still involved in high school athletics as an OFSA sport coordinator, Tim Larry.
Tim, it's great to catch up with you.
Thanks, Jeff. It's nice to catch up with you as well.
There's no better time because this would normally be the week of the OFSA track and field championships. It's always this, week from Thursday to Saturday. What's it like for you to not have not just OFSA track and field, but no track and field for a second straight year?
Well, it's been unusual to say the least. As my professional life has sort of revolved around track and field and cross country, you could set your clock to the week and what meet it was. My wife is as knowledgeable about those dates as any, and so yeah, as it's a Monday of what would be the OFSA week, and having done 2 OFSA championships in Belleville, knowing what has to take place and what has been done, and you're going through your mental and physical checklists to get ready. It's a busy time, and being in my role that I have with OFSA as a sport coordinator for track and field and 3 other sports, this is the week that I would be in constant contact with the conveners just to make sure that they were ready, and if they had any questions, just to be there and support them, because people who convene an OFSA track and field are extremely knowledgeable. Many have done it before, and so they know what has to happen and when.
When you talk about the clock, last week would have been the East Regional meet, and those probably would have been some pretty cold days.
Well, yeah, they all blend together after a number of years, but we do tend to remember the days that were not as beautiful as others. And so certainly I'll never forget going to Ottawa one year and having torrential rainfall, and this was when it was a 1-day meet, and it poured from the beginning of the day basically until the 4x4s at the end of the day. We were so wet. And in other years where you're at an invitational meet, you take stock of things and you look at the athletes, and the kids are complaining about the weather, and they're sore and they're tired and they're miserable. And as coaches, we're miserable too, but we just don't wear it outwardly like the kids would. In an invitational, you'd pull the plug and say, yeah, we're out of here. We're not going to risk injury. But you can't do that in an East Regional when you've got an OFSA berth at stake. So, yeah, I don't think we've ever had, that I can remember, snow at regionals. And that's what it would have been last Friday. And I had some contact with some former colleagues, and all of us acknowledge the fact that we miss it desperately, but we would not want to have been out in that weather.
Can you talk about the accomplishments at ENSS? Because I don't have the up-to-date numbers on me, but I mean, I remember at least 25 consecutive Bay of Quinte track and field championships. It probably grew to a bigger number since then. And of course, so many athletes from the school in Brighton went on to the big meets as well, East Regionals and OFSA. Yeah, so just if you can talk about the success you had at ENSS.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really proud of being a part of it. When I retired, which was, believe it or not, 7 years ago, 2014.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, it is hard to believe. We had won 30 consecutive championships at the Bay 20 level, and I think we had won probably 15 CASA championships, but we had those were not in a row, but we had begun to capture those ones with some regularity, and it's continued. I mean, when I retired, the program was left in great hands with Ann Falla and Julie Lang, and they continued the success at the local level, and it was always nice to go and work at the meets. I mean, I coached for a few years when I did retire, but then I've sort of transitioned into a role at the meets of a starter. It's always nice to see the kids from the school come through, because you don't know those kids anymore, right? And so yeah, we had a great run of success. And when I went there in 1983, the foundation was laid by Jack Strupp, and before him a gentleman by the name of Brian Camardi. And our whole philosophy was to get kids to come out to the sport that we all had a passion for, and no matter what their ability level, provide a space for them to compete at in an event that either they really wanted to do or we felt suited their physical characteristics. And success breeds success, and kids kept coming out, and we have, every year we'd see the program grow. You'd do your entries for Bay of Quinte, and there would be 60 to 70, sometimes 75 kids who you're bringing to a championship event, and many of those would continue to advance along the way. And when you got to East Regional, that's where it really became challenging, because now you're going up against the Ottawas and the Eastern Ontario schools, who were also very committed to the sport and very talented, and had many more amenities like track clubs and facilities that allowed those kids to compete at a pretty high level. So yeah, it was fun, and I have no regrets about anything. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the fact that in my last few years we were able, with the community's help and the board's help, to build a really great facility at East Northumberland, and it's gonna serve many people for many, many years to come.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about the new track and facility. So what was it like before the new track came along?
Well, that, if you can picture a cow pasture, it was a 373 meter cinder oval that had very, very thick cinders on it, and it was hard. We wouldn't even train on it. The irony of all of our success is that very little training ever took place on that cinder track. I coach hurdlers. I've coached, all the different events, but hurdling was the event that I was most focused on. And we would train kids on the road, like the parking lot road. There was a ramp that ran up into the back of the school, and we would have kids do repeats on those, and I'd set hurdles up on the flats, and that cinder track was just not good for kids' physical health. Like, kids would complain after a short period of time, and you just have to shut it down because you didn't want them injuring themselves. So that was really the motivation to spearhead an effort to get a real facility in there.
Yeah, so amazing after all that all of a sudden now they have such a great track and facility to train in right at their school. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's kind of the legacy that I know I was kind of hoping to leave, and that we would have our committee was really enthusiastic about providing something not only for the kids of the school but also the community. Brighton demographically has an older population, and there would be
a group that would walk inside the school during the winter months on that hard terrazzo flooring. And so, we pitched to the municipality that if they came aboard as a partner, that it would be open to the community and they would be able to have a safe place for everybody to walk, but particularly senior citizens who, shouldn't be walking on the dangerous streets on uneven pavement and gravel, and they could walk in there and it would be a good spot for them to have. And of course, for our phys ed program and for our track and field and cross country program. But the field was a critical part of that too, because our field was not very good, not very safe. And so all of the team sports that use a field, soccer and rugby, they would have a great venue to use, and the amenities that we got with it. Jeff Kosnick, he was great to have as a principal because of his support, and he kind of knew how to navigate the board politics to get access to the right people so that he could make a pitch to get money to build things, right? And I had some previous experience with some of the local ways that you can get money in the community through charitable foundations. Like the Parrot Foundation was a huge support for us. They donated money for the track, but they also donated money for us to equip the track, because it's one thing to have the great track facility, but if you don't have the amenities like hurdles and steeplechases and starting blocks, then you've kind of built something, but you're not complete. So that was the other piece of it too, right? So all the kids now have everything they would ever want for the sport of track and field, and the coaches would be thrilled because they wouldn't have to beg, borrow, and steal to get things. They could buy. It was bought for them, so they have it.
Absolutely. Also, in terms of the success with the track program, just talk about all the great athletes that came through there, because that's part of it. I mean, you could consider probably Brighton to be one of the smaller towns. Now, I mean, you draw athletes in from all over, but you don't have that success without some great athletes coming through the school.
Yeah, we were really lucky. I am so grateful for the support that these kids and their parents had for what we were doing, because the athletes that came through, I mean, I could name a few, but the Jason McKissicks and Stephen Lawrences and Bianca Van Egmonds and like these kids who went on to achieve really notable things at the OFSA level, and some, like Jason and Steve, they went on to university scholarships in the United States, and with a certain amount of success at the NCAA level, but more importantly, they each of those two that went down south, they've been very successful in their lives. And I think, a lot of it, we know what sport can do. The power of sport is to teach many valuable lessons. So, those kids, like, they're so talented. Like, the talent was there. They just needed to have an opportunity and support people like us to draw it out of them. And, every kid who comes through, all they're looking for is a place to compete, to train, because young people, they are so open and willing to improve in whatever it is that they do. And I know that we provided that opportunity for those kids. And as soon as you show as a teacher and a coach that you're willing to go to bat and commit the time, the kids will reciprocate and do likewise. And when the talent is there, then the sky's the limit. And it was always so wonderful to see those students who bought in and achieved things that they probably didn't think that they could compete or they could achieve when they first started out. So we live vicariously through their success for sure, and correspondingly at their disappointments that they may have, because those things happen. But like I said, sport has the power to teach many different things, and surviving the the adversity that comes through competition and training is a valuable trait to have in real life.
Well, you mentioned the East Regional meet, and I often bring it up when I talk to some former track athletes I talk to because, and I mean, you hosted it a bunch of times in Belleville. But just talk about the challenge of that East Regional Championship meet for these local athletes from, Northumberland and surrounding areas, because, you've got all the regular athletes they're used to competing with, and then when you throw, athletes from Kingston and Ottawa into the mix, I mean, OFFS is huge, but East Regional is a big meet in itself.
Yeah, the regional format that we use for OFFS is really neat. There's 6 different regions, and 5 of the 6 have actual regional competitions. So when we look at the East region, and like you said, we have athletes drawing from larger urban centers. I mean, within the CASA area, like Peterborough is the largest community in and of itself, but you've got your Coburgs, which are bigger than some, but we're all still very small in the grand scheme of things. So you've got these kids who come from many different backgrounds in very small rural communities, which they might come to a large school like ours, but at the time when we really didn't have a great facility to train on, they're going into this huge meet. All of a sudden, when you get to regionals, it's a pre-OFSA is what it is. And so we tried, when we ran OFSAs or pre-East regionals, and we ran a number of them, as you said, we tried to imitate for the athletes what an OFSA was going to be like, because whether it ranged from the marshalling area, so that when competitors, they had to check into a marshalling tent, and then they would be marched out to their event if they were on the track, or marched out to their field event. They would then have on the track baskets that their warm-ups could be brought in, and we had basket kids to remove it and take it to the finish line. Like it is essentially their OFSA, and some kids were successful if they were top 4, moving on to OFSA where it was ratcheted up even more. But at East Regional, you've got these kids from Eastern Ontario programs that are very, very good, like Thousand Islands and Brockville, which honestly is one of the best programs, if not the best program in all of Ontario. Yeah. From Brockville, but then you've got the Ottawa schools who have, it's a larger urban center, of course, but they also have a phenomenally successful club at the Ottawa Lions. So if you were a track and field athlete in Ottawa, then outside of your high school, you probably were joining that club, and that club has been recognized a number of times over the years as the most successful track and field club in Canada. So, and they train 12 months a year. Many of our kids, we used to refer to them as 6-week wonders, because the track season would begin and 6 weeks later it would be over. I mean, at our school, we would go 8 weeks, so I guess they were 8-week wonders. But for many schools that didn't have, a huge emphasis, I mean, it's a 6-week season. But you're competing against these kids who have professional coaching in their club system, to just having the amenities of a professional facility that is going to do nothing but make them better athletes. So it was pretty daunting for a few of our kids. Like, they would come in and they would be a little intimidated, and it was our job to sort of psychologically get them prepared to say, you know what, they're no different. They're just you from another city. So now it's time to perform.
I've been fortunate to cover some OFSA track and fields in Ottawa, Belleville, and Toronto, and yeah, as big as the East Regional meet is, OFSA is just on another level. And I mean, one of my recent guests, Perdita Felicienne, she...
Oh, good, yeah, Perdita.
Yeah, I had Perdita on, and, she said in the interview she still holds her OFSA medals in the same regard as the ones she's won on the global stage, because they were that difficult to win. Just your thoughts on the OFSA championships.
Well, yeah, it's nice to hear you talk to Perdita. I've come to know Perdita pretty well over the years, and she's such a such a class person, and she actually bought her book, and she sent a very nice note to my wife for Mother's Day for it. So we've kept close like that. But the OFSA championships, man, I mean, you got to think you're looking at 2,300 athletes, which are more than a Winter Olympics. So that gives it some perspective of how large it is. And then you look at the caliber of the athletes. So you've got your Perditas who go on to win a world championship at hurdling. But you've got so many potential Olympians in there. Like Ontario produces more Olympians per capita than any other province. So when you've got an OFSA track and field championship, you've got potentially, who knows how many that could go on. So, when you look through the years, like yesterday, for example, Damian Warner from London, he set a Canadian record in the decathlon at the GOTSIS decathlon meet, which is the best invitational decathlon and heptathlon championship in the world outside of the Olympics and World Championships. So Damien, he was, I believe, a long jumper in high school, and but somebody saw that he had this enormous all-around talent, and he was willing to commit to become the best in the world. And he's an Olympic bronze medalist, and if things go as everybody hopes, he'll add a gold to that this year, and he certainly set himself up. But he came out of the OFSA program. Andre DeGrasse, I mean, he was another kid. He was just this unrefined sprint talent that Tony Sharp discovered, and he shows up to his first practice in basketball shoes, because basketball was everything for Andre. So with Tony's discovery and equipping him with the right things and him understanding the sky's the limit, Andre really bought in. Like, he didn't win an OFSA championship. He was fifth in Brockville in 2011 in the 100 meters. But here he is today, one of the top sprinters in the whole world. So, and you could go on and on about the number of kids who have gone through the OFSA program to make it as an Olympic athlete, And so it doesn't mean that if you're not going to become an Olympic athlete and you've competed at OFSA, that your accomplishment is any less impressive, because only 24 kids from around the province make OFSA. And so if you make an OFSA championship, you are one of the elite level athletes in your event in the whole province, if not the country. So it's pretty neat to watch it. And then you hear the names. Oh, I remember that kid when he was at OFSA. That's kind of cool. So,
well, yeah, another one in 2011 in Brockville. Another recent guest I had was Kamika Bingham, and now she's an Olympian as well. And when you're watching these OFSA finals, you never know who you might see at the Olympics one day.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I will never forget. Certain things are burned into your brain. Yeah. So in 2002. We convened OFSA in Belleville for the first time, and I was standing near the finish line, just past the finish line, watching the 100 meters. So the midget boys 100 meters had one of our athletes, Nathan Crawford, in it. And so you got this kid, unassuming kid from Castleton, Ontario, right? And he's fast, really fast. So he makes the OFSA final. And so I'm watching as a convener, but more importantly as one of his coaches, and he will finish his third. And I remember clear as can be, the Ottawa Lions were the timing company that was doing. They had these display boxes which flashed the name and the place of each kid. So as they came through, they did first, they did second. Third shows up, N. Crawford, ENSS, and I'm like, oh my God. But in that race, the first two kids ahead of him were Sadie Smith and, the name escapes me right now, but both of whom went on to represent Canada in the Olympics.
Oh, wow.
So Nathan was in a race with these two other speed demons, but at that time, at 14 years of age, he was also one of those speed demons. And he has that to forever link himself to those two other kids.
Wow. Can you take me through what it was like to organize, any high school track and field meet, but especially those big East Regional and OFSA meets?
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you say organize the local meets, well, it seemed to be hand to me. So, I went to Trenton High School, which is a big track and field program, and Tom Nigro, who is one of my teacher coaches, my mentors, he ran meets. Peter Howe was the track coach, but Tom did everything. And Tom enlisted many staff at Trenton High School when they ran the meets. And so when I began teaching, Tom saw it as the opportunity to, because in many of these volunteer positions, as I'm sure you know, and many people will attest to, it's yours for life when you get voluntold to do it. So Tom sort of saw the opportunity to say that this was going to be mine in a few years. And then Wayne Bullock from Napanee, he sort of took it over because Trenton's track became unusable because it wasn't well maintained. So Napanee had a track, and then Napanee left the Bay of Quinte to go to Kingston, so it kind of fell into my lap. And I went to Brian Post, who was actually my first teaching round as a student teacher, or one of my first teaching rounds was at Trenton High School, and I was coaching in the track program, and Brian was one of my high jumpers, and Brian had begun teaching at North Hastings. So I remember when Wayne said, "You got to look after this now," I said, yeah, no problem, but I wasn't as aware or savvy with tech that maybe I am more so of now, and pales in comparison to what a guy like Brian was. So Brian was a math teacher and highly technical, and I said, "Posty, you're helping me with the track meet." So he got voluntold by me, who kind of got voluntold by Wayne, and so the cycle began. So Brian and I would oversee, as a great partnership for 20 years, to over 20 years, running the local meets. And the meets don't run themselves. It always fascinated me when kids would come to a Bay of Quinte and go, "Wow, this looks really impressive." And I'm thinking, yeah, you have no idea, because I would be at the meets. I would be there at 6 a.m. getting things set up, and people would slowly roll in. But every school has a part to play in the success of any local meet. Everybody's got to officiate an event, and it may not be their strong suit, so there's a little negotiation that can take place between schools. I'd rather do this. I don't want to do javelin. I'm afraid of javelin, type of thing. And in our school at ENSS, because we had the largest program and more teacher coaches, we would end up doing an awful lot of the jobs that have to get done for a meet. So, you just expand that out. And the Kawartha Athletic Association, when we would do CASA, and when they would do CASA, we would work in tandem. Where they needed help and expertise, we would be there, as they would be for us. And then East Regional was an association thing, so the association again came together to organize it. So it's pretty daunting to think about what goes on. And as we've said many times, track and field is one of, if not the hardest sport to organize, because it's literally like a 3-ring circus. There's always a moving part, always. And if one moving part somehow comes undone, it could throw off the whole program. So it takes a lot of people to make things run smoothly. Brian and I were really fortunate, because we had very willing and helpful partners in the Bay of Quinte and Kawartha to do all the meets we did over the years, and none of it would get done if administrations at those schools were not as supportive as they were. Because let's face it, you'd be out of the classroom. And then during this time of year, you're out of the class 5-6 times during the month of May into early June. And it's at a critical time in any semester when, things are happening that kids need to get their marks in place so that they can be successful for the term. But yeah, it says a lot about the importance of school sport for what the support is needed to help it to transpire to be the success that it's become. And then when you add in an OFSA, my goodness, OFSA is just a whole nother world, because now you're looking at the number of people, as I said, which is 2,300, and you've got the expectation is it is basically a formal Olympic for high school championship, because everything's got to be run like clockwork, and it's got to be done to the standards of excellence that if say for example a record was set, it's got to be verified so that it can stand. Because for some of these kids, the elite level ones, they're using OFSA as their qualifying standard to go on to championships in the junior or senior level.
Well, like I said, Tim, I've been to many meets over the years, and you always did a great job. And I always enjoyed covering track and field because there were so many great stories that came out of it in so many different events. And I always liked the challenge of, making sure I knew which local athletes that, especially the ones that were going to be contenders, when their events were, and making sure I jumped around to each event in time to catch them. So it was certainly always a challenge and always busy days at those meets.
Yeah, they're definitely busy days. But, I think one of the things, like you are someone who we really appreciate it too, because you really like to work at finding the names of the kids and certainly what their prospect were moving forward. And it's all part of the education, because, many people will have done track and field during their adolescence, but if they don't stay with it, they lose touch with what's involved in it. And in order to grow the sport, you've got to increase the knowledge base of people. So, we were really grateful to have people in the media like you and Paul Sabota and Tim Meeks from down our area who really worked to want to put a story out there and find out a little bit, not just throw in results. Like, they actually profiled some kids to give them the publicity that those kids deserve because of how much work they put in and success they had.
Well, and a lot of times in track and field, it wasn't like every story wasn't necessarily a win or even a medal. Sometimes there was a bigger story behind the result, even if the result wasn't what the athlete was looking for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's lots of human interest stories that come out of it, isn't there?
As I mentioned earlier, this is the second straight year without track and field. And I'm just asking you this only from a coach's perspective. How do you think, these couple years without the sport has affected the athletes, do you think?
Well, oh boy, that's the question that I guess we won't know for a little while, right? Obviously, it's created a vacuum in everyone's lives, and kids, they're at that tender age where, they're trying to formulate who they are and what they're about and their interests, and not having school sport or community sport has been really hard. And I can only hope that when we come out of this, because we're getting closer and closer, fingers are crossed, that we'll be able to pick up and move forward with more enthusiasm for having appreciated greater what we haven't had. And, I worry, the one thing I worry about in the high school sports program is how many teacher coaches won't come back because they've been without. And, for some of them, you always see some aging teachers decide that their last couple of years they're not going to do it. They're just burned out and frustrated with things, and so you accept that attrition as part of the game. But I'm really, really hopeful that school boards are going to do what they can within their power to promote how valuable extracurriculars of all flavors are, but in the what we talk about in terms of sports, to encourage their people to get involved. And if that means allocating more funds so that they can provide a program to encourage kids to come out, because Jeff, this is not a mystery. The mental component of this pandemic has been very severe, and I think the physical well-being ties in very closely with the mental well-being of kids and teachers. That we've got to do whatever we can to pull out the stops to get everybody back involved as much as we can. And I'm hopeful, and I don't think I'm naive. I think that kids will come back. I'm hopeful that as many teachers will come back, and that we will be seeing a resurgence of interest in sports for our kids, because we know how valuable it is. So I don't have a crystal ball, but man, I'm very hopeful. I'm an optimistic individual by nature, so I'm hoping.
Well, Tim, hopefully this time next year we'll be getting ready for the OFSA Track and Field Championships. Thank you so much again for joining me.
Hey, my pleasure, and it's always good talking to you.
If you want local sports news from Northumberland County, check out totalsportsnorthumberland.ca. My Athlete Spotlight feature will return next week. If you know a young local athlete who should be featured, fill out the form on the Athlete Spotlight page on the website. They could have the opportunity to join me on the podcast to talk about their sports background and also ask questions to my other featured guest, such as a professional athlete. As I mentioned earlier, the OHL draft begins Friday night and continues Saturday. My next guest from Grafton was selected 6th overall by the Saginaw Spirit in 2015 and played 4 OHL seasons. He's now playing university hockey at the University of New Brunswick. Brady Gilmore.
Brady, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's been a while since I talked to you, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So the OHL draft is coming up this weekend. It's got to stir up some memories for you. What do you remember about following the draft in your year? And, you didn't have to wait long for your name to be called, but just describe what it was like to wait to hear your name.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. Growing up, I would always go to Pete's games or Goals games playing for Quinny, so definitely went to a lot of those. So definitely kind of a dream of mine playing the OHL. As soon as I was 16, that was kind of the goal. That's what I wanted to do. But just sitting around in my basement with my brother and my parents, it was a pretty neat experience getting that phone call.
You were chosen 6th overall by Saginaw. That must have been a pretty cool feeling to be drafted that high.
Yeah, I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to go. I knew it was kind of going to be around that range, but it was really cool, and just all the support I got. Coburg's a pretty small town, so it was a pretty cool experience, and got a lot of support from everyone around me and people that have been around me since I was pretty little and growing up, and still to this day a lot of them support me and follow me. So it's pretty cool, and definitely proud of where I come from.
Well, and when you go through the draft, you don't know where you're going to end up, and all of a sudden you're drafted not just to a new team, but you're going to go play in a new country too. All of a sudden you're in Michigan. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I guess it was a bit different, but I visited Saginaw. Was a team I visited in about January when I was in minor midget. So they took me out to dinner and kind of got to see what the town and watch the game. So kind of saw what it was like, and met the coaches and all of the front office people and stuff like that. So when I heard my name called by Saginaw, it was a good feeling, and kind of at least knew a little bit what it was like. So I was definitely happy.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about the process leading up to the draft, because I'm sure teams that are interested in you also want to know if you're interested in them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly didn't talk to a whole ton of teams. I probably talked to about maybe I think 10, around 10 or 12 teams that were around the range where I think I was going to get picked. So a lot of phone calls and stuff like that, and just questions, getting to know the GMs or the scouts that were calling. So it was a pretty cool experience seeing the OHL teams kind of pop up on my phone. You know, teams that I've been following since I was little. So it was definitely a really neat experience.
I remember you playing both in Coburg and Baltimore when you were really young. Yeah. But what age, what level can you remind me? Did you begin playing AAA hockey in Quinte?
So I played in Baltimore for 2 years, I believe, in novice. Yeah, both years novice, and then I ended up going to Coburg single A for my minor Adam year. And then the first year, Quinte AAA actually had a team my age, was Major Adam. So that's kind of when I decided to go and give AAA a shot. And yeah, I loved it. I was there ever since. And there was a good chunk of us from the first 2 years that stayed all the way through. So it was pretty neat. Not a whole lot of teams and organizations can say that they had a lot of the same guys come up all the way. So it was pretty cool, and I still keep in touch with a lot of them.
Yeah. What? Just to add to that, what did you really enjoy about playing with the Red Devils organization, and how did it really help prepare you to get to that OHL draft and then play in the OHL?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of great coaches actually. My first year, it was kind of parents that coached, and they were awesome. Kind of our first year, kind of toughing out the waters. We weren't quite as good our first year, but I think it helped a lot and helped us going forward. And then we actually got Patrick Shear and Kerry Gable, Brent Husenfeld, and Grant Pope, and they were with us for all the way up until minor midget, and they were awesome. I still to this day, I think they were a big part of developing all of us, and especially myself. You know, they treated us like almost like a junior team. You know, we were there earlier. We practiced all the time. Practices were really good, and yeah, like I said, it was almost like a junior team. I don't think many minor hockey teams kind of did it like we did, and I think a lot of our success was due to them.
So Brady, as far as your OHL career, when you went to Saginaw, it was I don't know, a bit of a rebuild, maybe even a constant rebuild at times there, I think. And the team really grew into a contender by the time you were done. Just talk about the experience of going through that process with the Saginaw Spirit.
Yeah, definitely. Our team definitely wasn't one of the best. My first couple of years, we weren't the best. It was pretty cool kind of experience going from one of the weaker teams, kind of being there through the rebuild and being able to be a part of that the team last year. That I mean, we got pretty close. Yeah, that one still stings, losing that one, but it was really cool. I think GM and the owners did a great job, kind of bringing guys in and really changing the culture around Saginaw. And I think now to this day, I think it's a great organization, and I think it's really growing, and it's developed a lot of players in the last couple of years.
What was the support like in Saginaw from the fans to support an OHL club?
Yeah, I mean, when the fans were there, they were pretty into it and pretty rowdy. I mean, our playoff run, I can remember the one OT game we had against Guelph. I still haven't heard an arena go louder than that one. That was pretty sweet. But yeah, in the States, obviously, college basketball and college football is pretty big. So I mean, early on in the year when that was going on, if Michigan or Michigan State was playing, a lot of people would rather watch that than come to our games. But whenever we were in playoffs, it was always pretty packed, and I loved our fans. They got really into it when they were there.
What was it like to play games close to home? Because I know you always got lots of support. I was at some of the games when you would play in places like Oshawa, Peterborough, and Kingston.
Yeah, that was always really cool. I mean, small town, so the game. I think my first year in Peterborough and Oshawa, there were a couple buses that came up, and it was just really cool to see the support and see my family. All my family would come to those games, and then, like I said, all the support from just fans and people local in Coburg would come watch. So that was definitely pretty cool. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play there too much. Maybe once a year, but it was always pretty cool coming back and playing in buildings that I had watched in growing up.
Definitely. Like I said, the OHL draft is coming up. We have some players from Coburg that are hoping to hear their names called this weekend. You know, and many more of their teammates from the Red Devils as well. What advice do you give to those players, not only when it comes to the draft, and also should they get the chance to play at the OHL level? What's the type of advice you could pass on?
Yeah, I think just work ethic is the main thing. I mean, I don't think it matters where your name is called or even if it's called at all. I think it's just kind of a tryout at that point. Obviously, I think the higher picks will get a little bit more of a look, but at the end of the day, it's just a tryout and means you're a part of the organization. But yeah, just keep working hard, and you never know what'll happen. No, I'm excited to watch it. I always follow, see if any Quinny kids and Coburg kids get drafted. So wish them all the best. And I know a couple of them, and they're great kids and good hard workers. So I'm excited to see where they go.
You were an NHL draft pick by the Detroit Red Wings. What was it like to have that, to go through that experience? Obviously, you didn't end up signing with the team, but it must have been a dream of yours just to have been drafted.
Yeah, that was a super cool experience. I mean, I didn't go to the draft. I spent the day golfing with my best buddy there at home, and I think we were on hole 6 or something like that, and I was kind of following it, not really, just kind of looking at my phone every once in a while to see who went and stuff like that. But I think we were walking off the green, and I had a couple missed calls from my agent and stuff, and my phone just started blowing up. So that was really cool. And then obviously went to the camps and stuff, and got to go to the arenas and stuff like that, and just the history of the Red Wings organization, walking through the halls and getting to see the dressing room, going in it, and all that stuff was just super cool. And our player development guys, Sean Horkoff and Dan Cleary, I mean, I would talk to them a decent amount, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, just having former pro players talk to me and reaching out, and they were great for me and helped me a lot. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
You ended up foregoing your overage year with Saginaw. You decided to play Canadian University hockey. Just talk about what went into that decision and the importance of that for you.
Yeah, so I wasn't planning on going to school or anything like that, but I went to camp my overage year, and we weren't sure how it was going to be in Saginaw or kind of get traded or what the situation was. It was still up in the air when I was there. I'm sure I would have went somewhere or stayed inside, but I played with a guy in Saginaw, Chris Bennett, who was actually at UMD, and he texted me one night, just said, "Hey, like, people give you a call," and I just kind of thought to myself, you know what? Realistically, I don't know if I'll sign an entry-level deal or whatever, and I don't know if I would even take a lower-end contract at this time, so I just figured go to school and get my degree and develop there and try and get a deal after. And if I didn't end up going to school, UMD was definitely the place I wanted to be, and I think it was great for my development. I mean, my first year I went there, I felt like I improved. I'm just guys still kind of older, I'm stronger, so I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy with my choice. It's kind of unfortunate that I didn't play my OA year, but at the end of the day, I think the decision I made really benefited me personally, and I'm really happy I went to UMB.
And what are you studying at UNB?
Yeah, so I'm taking. I'm in the business program, so
Great.
do something with that, and hopefully by the end of my couple more years there, I'll have my degree and hopefully go for a pro contract. And that's kind of the plan right now.
Well, and again, we always talk about how the path is different for everyone, and whether you get drafted or not in the OHL draft, and even if you play in the OHL draft, there's lots of different routes you can take, isn't there?
Yeah, like I was saying, I mean, getting drafted, nothing's set in stone. It's just kind of a tryout, and it's just all the work ethic and what you put into it. But yeah, definitely not the path I would have thought I'd taken when I was younger, but never know what can happen. Just keep working hard and see what happens.
What was the past year like without hockey, at least in terms of playing actual games?
Yeah, so out east, it wasn't too bad COVID-wise. So we thought we were gonna get a season. Unfortunately, we didn't. So we just kind of used here. We were on the ice almost every day, working out a lot. So it was kind of like a development year. So you just try and take all the positives you can out of it, and not much you can do, right? So just try and work on yourself every day and continue to get better and be ready to go when we finally do get to play a game, which is hopefully next season.
Absolutely. Well, Brady, thank you again so much, and best of luck as you continue, playing hockey at the University of New Brunswick.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm pleased now to be joined by the president of the Quinte Red Devils AAA hockey organization, who also coaches the U16 team that has some draft-eligible players from Cobourg, Tyler Longo.
Tyler, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Northumberland hasn't had a lot of OHL picks over the years, but there's definitely been some good ones. I mean, I can go all the way back to just thinking of some of the ones that played for the Red Devils. You can go all the way back to Justin Williams in 1997. In more recent years, guys like Josh McGuire, Brady Gilmore, Dawson Baker, Graham Dickerson. Last year, Dallin Wakely and Owen Beck. Yeah, just talk about some of the talent the Red Devils organization gets from this Northumberland region.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, yeah, that's a very strong list that you just named there, and I know as Quinte, we are certainly proud of all the players that come through and represent Quinte. I'm just going off the top of my head here, but I think that Brady Gilmore's probably been the highest selection. I think he was 6 overall back in the day. I think it was Saginaw, I believe. I could be wrong there.
Saginaw, yep.
Yeah, so absolutely. It's been a great run for Quinte, especially over the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 years. Quinte's developed some phenomenal hockey players. And, it's been great to see because a lot of these players have come out of the Northumberland Association. And that still holds strong today. We still have quite a few teams that have a lot of representation from Northumberland. We have 9 teams in our association, ranging from all the way from minor atom to major midget. And it's a good, healthy crop of Northumberland representation. So it's great to see. And we're certainly thankful that we are able to draw from the Northumberland area. For sure.
And I'm going to talk to you about some of the guys you've been able to coach from this area. But first, last year, players had basically a full season in before everything got shut down. I know Dallin and Owen, they had, I think, just played their championship weekend before things got shut down. That wasn't the case this year. The guys didn't get much of a season at all, obviously. So what was it like for the players this year, the ones who want to get noticed ahead of the OHL draft? What was the experience like for them this year?
Yeah, it was a challenging year. Everyone was in the same boat all across, obviously, not just here in Canada, but for the most part in the States as well. Things came to an abrupt stop for everybody. At the time, at the Major Bantam year, we were just getting ourselves set to hopefully wrap up a series with Ajax, which would have sent our boys to the Omate Jays up in Oakville, which obviously was the goal from the day one. But before that, we were able to obviously witness the 04 team win the Omate Jays in our own backyard in Belleville, which was, certainly it was a motivating factor for our 05 kids to push forward and try and follow suit there. And then obviously, COVID hits and things come to a quick stop. So, 4 or 5 months later, we're still in the same situation as we approach September. And it was challenging because, you're used to, or at least the boys are used to competing, not always against their own peers, which was a challenge in itself. But we made the best of it. We were pretty lucky in this area where, for the most part, we weren't into too many lockdowns. We were able to, run a normal practice with 20 to 26 players on the ice, put together some inter-squad games. And then, like I said, this area being in a good condition where we were able to have some viewers in the stands, we were able to bring in a lot of different scouts, GMs, and head coaches from OHL teams just to get a chance to see our kids in a practice setting and also in a game setting, which we inter-squadded. Generally 3 days a week. We'd go Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We were playing games for the most part. But it was still a challenge just to keep the intensity level up with the boys. Trying to make sure that, they're staying focused. And like I said, it's never easy always competing against your peers and trying to keep that intensity up. But I thought our kids did a phenomenal job at holding each other accountable, pushing each other each day, and obviously staying positive as can be through the whole process. Minor midgets, it's a real fun year. And unfortunately, these boys didn't get to experience what the minor midget year really entails, right? From your early bird tournaments to your Silver Sticks and Whitby to your Shanahans and your Marleys at Christmas time, where, usually the rink's packed with 300 to 500 people in an arena that normally fits about 250, and most of them are standing there in black jackets and a clipboard. And they didn't get to experience any of that, right? And also, they didn't get to finish out what we started. I've been with this team since minor Bantam, so I was going into my third year with this group. And obviously, the cliches in hockey, the sayings of, believe in the process and good things will happen at the end. And that was always our motive is, believe in the process, get ourselves from minor midget, let's finish it off the right way. And then obviously, COVID hits, and we did a lot of practicing, a lot of inter-squad. So it was for sure challenging, but at the end of the day, I certainly proud of every player that was on that 05 team on how they handled it and came to the rink ready to go.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the guys from Coburg you were able to coach. I'm going to start with Ethan Miedema, because he's getting a lot of attention right now and could be a very high draft pick on Friday night.
Yeah, Ethan Miedema, he's, first of all, a phenomenal kid. Certainly a pleasure coaching Ethan. Very respectable, loves the game, has a ton of passion. And he's got a ton of drive and big body at 6'4". I believe in the Major Bantam year, he put up 104, 105 points. He's one of the top 05s for sure in the province, and certainly deserves the recognition that he's finally getting. But he's been a treat to coach. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time on him. He motivates himself, but he also backs it up with the way he plays. I think he's an elite hockey player, and certainly excited for him and his family for this upcoming draft this Friday. It's might put a little bit of rest to a year that wasn't what we expected, but certainly the circumstances. I think Ethan's put himself in a phenomenal position to have an exciting weekend, and he's got a very bright future ahead of him. And I'm very excited for Ethan. He's put the work in, and you always like to see the kids get rewarded that put the work in. And it's been a good build-up. You see a lot of talk about Ethan in the media, but he's a pretty humble kid. You won't get a whole lot out of him. He's pretty thankful for whatever it is that comes to him in the future, and he's certainly a kid that as a coach I'll always remember for sure. A lot of fun to coach, absolutely.
Also on defense, Chris Bridges.
Yeah, Bridgie. Yeah, he's a defenseman. Bridgie. I've coached Bridgie now for the last 3 years. Another kid that's very, very skilled. He loves to jump up into play. He's a very offensive defenseman. I'd say well above average skating. Loves to compete, and he's been a great player for our 05 group over the last 3 years. He is another player that's pretty passionate about the game, puts the work in, and it's starting to show too. And he's getting a lot of attention here in the last week or so, leading up to the draft on Friday. So I expect a successful draft for him as well. But he's been a lot of fun to coach as well.
Great. You also had a goaltender from this area, Aiden Crowley. Talk about Aiden and the work he's put in.
Yeah, you know what? I got a soft spot for Aiden. Aiden is a phenomenal kid. He's someone that you always root for, and he's not only a good kid but a phenomenal goaltender. Aiden would always end the practices for us with some kind of an inspirational thing, he's well respected by his teammates and obviously as the coaching staff as well. And like I said, Aiden, he's a smaller goaltender, but he competes and he comes to practice every day with a good attitude. He's put up some great numbers in the years that he's been here with Quinny. So I expect some good things from Aiden come this weekend as well. And not only that, but he's got a phenomenal family that supports him as well. I think he's a pretty good umpire too, by the sounds of things, and a good golfer. So better watch out for him in those ranks as well. You might see him in the major league one day, umping one of these Blue Jays games. But yeah, he's a good kid. I certainly enjoyed coaching Aiden, and he certainly made coming to the rink a lot of fun for myself. Never an issue with Aiden. Such a good kid, and no matter what Aiden's path is from here on in, he'll be a very successful individual for sure.
That's great, and I was going to ask you too, because even in the years that you're not coaching the U16 group, like I said, you're currently the president of the Red Devils, and you've been with the organization for a long time now. What is it like for you on OHL draft day and the pride you feel for these players?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to bring a little bit of closure to a year that was challenging, and a year that hopefully we never go through again. Not just in sports, but in general. You certainly build a strong bond with these boys over the last 3 years. Ideally, in the normal season, we spend 5 of the 7 days together as a team. So you certainly build a very, very strong connection with all the players. And being with this group, I was with this group in minor peewee, and then obviously left major peewee and came back in minor bantam. So I've been with this group, I guess you could say, for the last 4 of the 5 years. So you really get to see them grow up from a young teenage to men as they get into their minor midget year, and the sacrifices that they put, the hard work that they put together, even the sacrifices that the families put up is always rewarding come draft day. And not everyone is successful at the end of the day, but it's certainly going to be an exciting day for not only myself and the coaching staff, but obviously for Quinty, and it's certainly going to be exciting for the players and their families. So I'll be sitting there quietly, listening as the draft goes on, and hopefully at the end of the day, we hear a bunch of Quinty names called to teams, and hopefully that'll be the start of their next journey.
What do you say to the players that don't get selected?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. It's a good question because, I honestly, truly think that things for them are just beginning now. They start to be under the radar. They start, they're on a platform where they're starting to get a little bit more notice come the minor midget year. And there's a lot of players that, don't get drafted to the OHL, but find different ways to get to where they want to go at the end of the day, whether it's, they want to go to school, whether you want to play some junior hockey in the area, or possibly, go OHL, or not many get to make this their living, but there's different ways to get there. And just because your name wasn't called the day of the OHL draft doesn't mean things are over. To me, I think kids are really just starting to develop once they get into the ages of 16, 17, and 18. And to me, those are very important years. They're starting to realize some of the strengths they didn't have when they were 15 or 16, that a lot of kids are late bloomers. And, I'm sure I don't have the numbers on me, but, if you take a look at a lot of the pro players that are, playing now for different NHL teams or even minor pro, they weren't always high draft picks, and a lot of them are walk-ons too. So, there's different ways to get to where you want to go at the end of the day. So it's just making the right decisions on what's going to be best for your development, and obviously making the right decisions. It's going to give you the best opportunity to make that jump to wherever it is, whether it's junior A, it's Coburg, Wellington, Trenton, or junior C, or, getting yourself the opportunity to stay involved and possibly get, Canadian University scholarship somewhere as well. So there's lots of different ways to get to where you want to go. Just sometimes there's different paths, and just got to be patient.
I mentioned Dallin Wakely and Owen Beck. It's too bad that they missed out on their first season of OHL. You didn't coach them, but you still know them quite well, I think. What can you say about those two guys that were both drafted in the second round last year, one pick apart?
Yeah, I mean, both very, very highly skilled players that have a wonderful future ahead of them. This year, we had Owen Beck out to most of our skates. Once again, just a very high performance athlete. He wants it. You can see he's putting in the work away from the rink, obviously keeping himself mentally sharp for when he gets the opportunity to join Mississauga. I know he was great for our kids this year, just because he pushed our kids. He's going to be a special player, moving forward with Mississauga, and I think he's going to do wonderful things with that organization. And then Dallin Wakely, he just come out a few times, but I obviously had the opportunity to watch Dallin play with Quinny all the way up. More of the major bantam and minor midget scene, and once again, there's just another phenomenal hockey player that's got a bright future ahead of him, and I'm excited to follow those boys in their next journey with Mississauga and North Bay. I think both of them are going to represent obviously their teams well, but obviously being alumni with Quinny, that's always fun to watch, and they're going to be very, very well respected players with the teams they're going to.
Yeah, Dallin's brother Sid, he's in Peterborough now, and I'm sure hoping to hear his name called. But you actually coached him previously.
Yeah, I had Sido he was with us minor Pee-wee, and then we had Sid in minor Bantam, and then Sid went to Peterborough in major Bantam. But yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, the Wakely family, a very athletic family, whether it's, I believe, they're into lacrosse quite a bit, but both boys are very talented and both very good kids. So, yeah, I'm hoping to hear Fido's name come this weekend as well. It'd be a great way for the Wakely family to celebrate that 2 years in a row.
Tyler, just talk about anything else you want to mention about the Red Devils organization. And I want to ask you too, while there's a lot of different factors for each player, when would you say is the appropriate time for, say, a AA player with the Northumberland Nighthawks to try and make that jump to the AAA level?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so kind of a little bit about Quinny. We have 9 teams in our association. We start at minor, novice, all the way to major midget. We're certainly an organization that has had a ton of success over the time that we've been part of the AAA loop. We really focus ourselves on making sure that we give every single team and player not only the best opportunity to succeed while they're here in Quinny, but obviously we try and give the boys and girls the best opportunity to have a good experience. That's very important to us. That at the end of the day, when they graduate, hopefully from Quinny and move on, like Owen Becks and Dallin Wakely's, and hopefully some of the boys that are coming up in this year's draft, that they look at their experience in Quinny as a very positive one, and that we're a big part of their development. So, and to answer the second part of that question, I don't think there's a right or a wrong time to join AAA. I think it's more of, you have to take a look at exactly where your daughter or your son's at as far as their development goes right now, depending on where they are, what center they're in, whether it's Northumberland, whether it's Quinny West or Napanee or all the smaller areas around us. If you don't feel that they're getting the proper development as being pushed, things seem like they're coming a little bit too easy for them. I think that's a good opportunity to take a look at what's the next best route that's going to give my child the best chance to continue to grow as an athlete. It's a big commitment, but we certainly pride ourselves in making sure that the coaches and everyone that's involved with each team brings the passion to the rink every day, and gives the experience, to that AAA player that they're looking for, or maybe that they're lacking at their home center. So I really don't think, Jeff, that there's a right or wrong answer. You'll hear a lot of people say, well, I don't really think the player needs to go to AAA until after minor Bantam or maybe after major Pee Wee. But honestly, I think it's different in each situation. And if like I said, if your daughter or son are having their way wherever they are, and the game's becoming a little bit too easy for them, I think that might be a good chance to challenge them and put them in a different situation where they're playing against their top peers at that age level, across Ontario. So there's no right or wrong answer there, I think. But we certainly have been lucky to get a lot of real great players from Northumberland, and we're very happy for the success that we've had lately with the players that have come through Quinny, and certainly look forward to obviously welcoming new players and families to the organization in Quinny, and hopefully we can produce more Dallin Wakely's, Nolan Becks, and Ethan Miedemas, and Chris Bridges and all those guys as we move forward here. So, but yeah.
The one thing I should mention too is when I asked you about the guys who aren't drafted, it must be nice that the OHL has since added a major midget draft too.
Yeah, and the major midget draft, I think is starting to get the recognition that it should. It's an important year. I really was hoping that Hockey Canada could have used the the opportunity this year to push the draft back from the 16-year-old draft to 17, right? I just think kids are a little bit more mature. They get the opportunity to finish high school in their hometown, but I think you're just mentally and physically getting a whole different player at that 17. And the major midget draft next year in particular is going to be scouted quite a bit. There's going to be some players missed this year just because the scouts and the GMs haven't had the chance to go out and watch. So, I mean, that's going to be important, especially for the kids that, if their names aren't called, there's lots of time. There's another year to go. And like I said earlier, there's so many different routes and avenues to get to where you want to go. But, yeah, it's certainly a nice touch to give these kids an opportunity after minor midgets to still prove themselves and maybe get their names back out, in the hockey world again. So.
Well, Tyler, thanks so much for joining me. Enjoy following the draft this weekend, and best of luck to all the players.
Thanks again, Jeff, for having myself. And it's going to be an exciting weekend for our players and our families with the OHL draft coming. And thanks for the time for letting me put the Quinte Red Devils under the radar a little bit here. So thank you.
Thank you again to my guests. I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of the Total Sports Northumberland podcast.